Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'd really like to see the Lucas cut of Rise of Skywalker, just because I mean, I guess they have like a 4.5 hour cut that was just all the different things thrown together, and I'd really like to see some of the alternative cuts because what they reshot a good portion of that movie, what 2, 3 times, and then they were brought back for a fourth, I believe.
Well, I'm not really sure about that because they're so quiet about it. They're so secretive about it.
Yeah.
Um, George Lucas was consulted by J.J. Abrams going into Episode 9. They met and maybe exchanged some notes and everything, but I don't really know how much they would have followed his actual guidance as far as the final cuts and all things like that. There are rumors that J.J. Abrams had a cut and then the studio went and changed it around a lot. I think there's some merit in that. I think there's some truth to that. Um, it just, to me, it seemed like everyone from the fans to the director, J.J. Abrams, to the actors themselves, everyone just seemed very relieved when the sequel trilogy came to an end.
Oh
Like,
yeah.
oh my God, we survived it. But the results were mixed, and fans have been very, very critical about that.
Yeah, I think it just comes down to the age-old, debate of quality versus quantity, right? I mean, like you're saying, too much too fast, when you rush out a product, I mean, just thinking like an assembly line, it's going to be, less of a quality product than something that's handmade and, someone puts the time and dedication into making and sculpting a unique thing. But I mean, I don't know. I feel like there was just a push for the merchandising, and the merchandising is really where it started falling off, and really when Disney decided to go in this new direction. So let me ask you. I mean, there's a lot of rumors going around about what the post sequel Disney universe will look like. Everything from they're gonna uncanonize it, which I don't believe is is any direction they're gonna want to go. Because of course Disney's not going to admit they ever did anything wrong. But there's a lot of rumors circulating out there. So what's your take on a lot of that stuff?
Well, I think we'll be looking closely at eras of Star Wars. What era is the one that's most fertile ground for telling quality Star Wars stories? I think fan reaction to original trilogy era Star Wars is
Mhm.
where it's at. I think that's where it all works. But then you run into these issues where the storytellers and filmmakers get boxed in by the weight. They have to carry the weight of the history of the whole thing,
Right.
and so they run into issues where they contradict previous storylines and things like that. I still think it can be negotiated. I think if you just pick, you can pick something within that era and make a great Star Wars story. Um, the other thing is following the Skywalker story. When George Lucas started using terminology like the chosen one in things like the prequels, it's like that's a tough act to follow.
Yeah.
You're talking about like the coming of the Messiah here. That's really big headline news in the Star Wars universe. What do you do for a second act? That's the thing. How do you follow that?
Yeah.
What in a way that we're going to care? So there are definitely some big hurdles to be overcome when bringing back Star Wars. But I think we'll be looking at something maybe outside of the eras we're familiar with, outside of the original trilogy era, outside of the sequel trilogy era, maybe something like ancient Star Wars, the
Yeah.
origin of the Jedi, stories like that we've heard whispers about over the years, the where did the Jedi come from? Things like that. That
Yeah.
could be interesting territory to get into, as long as it's more than just about plot. It's more than just about unveiling history. You have to have great characters in there too, and the
Yeah.
characters have to have great chemistry together. So it's a tall order, but those are pretty big ingredients of the Star Wars stew that I think they're going to have to give a shot. And so that's what I anticipate. Taika Waititi is directing a film that comes out in 2022, and that is really going to be pushing Star Wars into whatever the future direction is. And will it be a Star Wars that has those familiar tropes like TIE fighters, X Wings, and lightsabers? Or is it going to be something entirely different? I'm kind of leaning toward the entirely different. But then you get into territory like, well, if they're going to do something entirely different, why did they purchase the Star Wars license or the Star Wars IP to begin with?
Right.
You know, if they can't do something with the existing IP, why did they buy it in the first place? Just to have the name Star Wars to slap on any old thing? Uh, these
Yeah.
are the challenges that we face when looking toward the future of Star Wars as a fan base. And it's exciting and scary at the same time.
Yeah, I think that the reason why they purchased Star Wars to begin with, they saw the merchandising potential because that's what Disney's about is merchandising. But as you were, saying just kind of the weight of Star Wars history and lore, I mean, I think one of the biggest problems that Disney kind of had was how they threw out a lot of the expanded universe, and I hope going forward that they'll use that as an anchor point for their own stories and what they want to tell because man, I would love to see a trilogy of movies just about the Knights of the Old Republic. I'd love to see a trilogy covering like, the Jedi Mandalorian War. That would
Mhm.
be phenomenal. Just imagine like the action scenes that you could have with that. But I mean, just like even if they're gonna like focus on, the era, following the fall of the empire, like they did with the Mandalorian, like keeping it rooted with that the 30 years following that took place in the comics, I think would do a lot better to kind of reconnecting them with what Star Wars lore should be.
Yeah, and I think they'll be exploring these different eras, be it in the films or on a TV series or what have you. I think the films are a more likely option for that kind
Yeah,
of, delving into ancient times and stuff. But yeah, I like those ideas a lot. And I think there's a lot that can be done with it. But you have to have more than a premise. You have to have great characters. You have to give those characters purpose.
yeah,
That's a big problem that I have with the current day of novels, of Star Wars novels. You mentioned the expanded universe, and a lot of us look fondly back at those books, but they weren't perfect. They were hit or miss. We
yeah,
knew it,
absolutely.
but it seemed like that they had a cohesiveness to them. It seemed like they had a purpose, that the stories had a reason for happening. From book to book, you would get these 9-book series, and maybe that was overkill, maybe not, but at least everything was working together. With the current state of Star Wars books, it's just a bunch of one-offs, one-shots that are very heavily character focused and don't really lead you to any big conclusions at all. It just
Right.
is like a day in the life of Grand Admiral Thrawn almost. You know, here's an adventure he has, but it doesn't affect the big picture. It's character, yes, but story thin. The plot is thin. And you have to have strong characters and strong stories to tell strong Star Wars. And if one of them are missing, then it just feels like sort of phoned in.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so with the old expanded universe, you had a connective tissue between all of those stories, and you could watch the characters grow in those processes, like Jason and Jaina Solo, and then their younger brother Anakin, and all of those other famous expanded universe characters, everyone from like the Both and Borsk Fela to yeah, Grand Admiral Thrawn, whose story was already told in a nice compact trilogy,
Mhm.
and they keep bringing him back because they think that like Timothy Zahn can't write any other character or something. I don't know, but he was Grand Admiral Thrawn's return in the Rebels animated series was very well received. So they keep pumping out Grand Admiral Thrawn novels. Um, but I noticed that none of these new novels affect the big picture of the mythology. They seem like very specific, like a day in the life of sort of
Yeah,
stories.
yeah.
And I have trouble investing my time in those. And so I would love to see more expanded universe elements being brought in. like they've done with Thrawn. It's kind of hard to do without contradicting a lot of things too, though. So you have to be careful. Maybe we'll see some characters get reinvented, like a Mara Jade. We haven't seen her show up in years. And I know George Lucas wasn't personally too fond of that character, but the fan base was, and
Yeah.
there could be ways to bring her back and make
Why
her
didn't Lucas like her?
because George didn't like the idea of Luke settling down.
Okay.
Um, Mara Jade sort of came on the scene when George hadn't finished really defining what a Jedi Knight was,
Hmm.
and he went on to do that in the prequel trilogy.
Yeah, it makes sense.
And then after he did the prequels, he completely gave up the idea of doing any sequel to Star Wars. And so I think George had a hang up about the expanded universe in general that expanded on Luke's story past Return of the Jedi. See,
Right.
he knew something the Disney company didn't know, that it's a real hard thing to do to continue the story after Return of the Jedi. At
It's the
least according
perfect
to him.
ending. It's the perfect ending. I mean,
It's a great ending. But you still want to know what happened after they were done partying on Endor that night. You want to
yeah,
know, what did Luke do the next day? What did Leia do? And I would love to see an animated series expand on that a little bit. But they're going with the Bad Batch now, which seems like that's a direct spin-off from Clone Wars. And it could be very interesting because it's going to get into that dark period of time when the Empire is ruling the galaxy. And it'll be a nice bridge, I think, between the Clone Wars animated show and Star Wars Rebels. I
yeah.
don't know if you watch the animated series and everything.
I've not had a chance to watch Rebels yet, but I absolutely loved Clone Wars when it came out. I thought that was probably some of the best writing in Star Wars. And while we were talking about the expanded universe too, I feel like the newer expanded universe, like, they want to put out something quality, but it just never hits. I haven't really read the novels too much, but I was an avid comic book reader. I read all the Dark Horse stuff growing up, and I picked up, when Marvel started their new Star Wars series. A lot of it started off so good. I mean, I remember it was, I forget which issue of the Vader series. He's just surrounded by, dozens of, rebel fighters, and
Mhm.
they just say, you're surrounded, and he says, by nothing but fear and dead men, and then he just goes off and just starts mass murdering them all. And so it started out like real fresh and exciting, and I was hopeful about where they would take that, but then, a couple years in, all those series just started to peter off into mediocrity,
Mm.
and it just really doesn't hold a candle to some of the Dark Horse stuff that had come in the past.
The second Darth Vader series, it started in 2015 by Charles Soule,
Yeah.
is that's highly recommended. Some of the better Star Wars comic book writing of all time. I mean, it's just such a great story. You got to check it out because Vader's dealing with it's post Revenge of the Sith, obviously, and he's dealing with his new normal,
Right.
you know. And he's just like us. He didn't like wearing a mask either, but he had to. And so he deals with that, and it gets really out there too, with some force visions he has, and this Sith artifact. It's a mask from a dead Sith Lord, but it's possessed by the essence of the dead Sith Lord, and so Vader deals with the discovery of that mask and the powers that it contains, and it makes him very introspective with the force and everything. It's fabulous. And it's a whole series, I mean, of stories. Um it's a great, they show elements of Order 66 with Vader hunting down Jedi, and
Yeah.
it's really, really well done. So I have to recommend that to you. You can check it out on the Marvel Unlimited app if you're into that thing. And all the old Dark Horse stories are on that Marvel Unlimited app too.
Yeah.
I, I don't know if you're like me, but I have boxes and boxes, the long boxes, the white long boxes filled with
I
those
still
old
have
Dark Horse comics in my attic.
I still have a bunch of those too.
It's just so much easier to punch open an app on my iPad and read them there as opposed to going up into the attic and finding the bagged comic and everything. So, yeah, anytime technology helps me replace physical media, I'm always very grateful because I'm someone who's traveled my whole life with lots of physical media, be it from vinyl to VHS to you name it. I have all formats. I mean, I could just reach up and grab anything. Like here you go, DAT tapes. When was the last time you saw a DAT tape? Okay, I got crates of them in my house. Are you kidding me? Here's one. Here's one. Cassette tape. Remember the cassette tape? And you
Oh
probably
man.
don't. I got
I still got a cassette player in my car, man. I got to use I got my little cassette aux cord that I plug my phone into.
Oh, wow.
So
Who
yeah,
would
I
have ever
still got
thought
some
we'd
old
be
school.
plugging phones into those? But yeah, so anytime I could take physical media out of my life, because I've been with radio shows where we've had to, back in the 90s before everything was digitized,
Yeah.
we'd have to ship road boxes filled with physical media to different states and everything. It was
Oh
just
wow.
insanity. It was total insanity. So I don't mind. I'm so happy and thankful for the digital age. I used to have to, or like college days, moving in and out of college and stuff, boxes of vinyl, boxes of CDs and cassettes. It's like, boy, man, if you told me I'd be able to fit all that in my pocket someday.
It would have been a game changer.
Yeah, oh my God, would it? And it would have saved me a lot of time in my youth that I could have wasted more wisely.
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
know,
more on events and things than actual things, you know what I mean?
we're just wasting it, just wasting time. I was expert level at wasting time when I was in my 20s. Expert level.